You know me as Kristen Meghan. In my previous identity, I'm known as Sergeant Kristen Edwards. So my job was to ensure that everything that the Air Force was doing, that we were tracking the exposures for all military personnel as related to what was the Air Force doing, how did it relate to health, and what was the Air Force doing and how did it relate to environmental impact. I spent almost 10 years in the Air Force. I'd love to say it was the best 10 years of my life, but I'll tell you about one day that changed my life. My second base was in Oklahoma City at Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma. How many of you have heard about geoengineering or chemtrails?
Yeah. Yes.
How many of you have heard it's a crazy loon conspiracy theory? I just want to ask you guys one question. Do I look crazy to you?
No.
Did I talk to any plants or walk up here backwards, or am I wearing a tinfoil hat? I'm not crazy. Throughout my military career in the Air Force, I was made rank my first time. I had 4 stripes on my shoulder. I had medals like you couldn't believe. I was the exemplary Staff Sergeant of the United States Air Force. I actually was transferred from one base to another to do a special operation because of my stellar background. When I was at Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma, I heard about geoengineering, and I thought, oh, those crazy conspiracy loons. I'm sure we've all heard of Alex Jones from Infowars.com.
Yeah.
The man I once thought was a loon, wearing a tinfoil hat, living in a bunker, that I just shunned off as, you know, this guy doesn't get it. Did he strap on the uniform? Has he gone out there and defended his country? Well, it was around 2007 that I first heard about geoengineering. And I started to piece the puzzles together, like a spouse who thinks their husband or wife is cheating, when all the dots start to connect, right? Well, part of my job in bioenvironmental engineering was to approve hazardous materials that came on the base. So whether you were using a simple spray can of paint, or you were ordering an oil solvent to degrease airplanes, I sat at a computer and I approved those hazardous materials on base and tied them to a process and a building. Now, there are certain things we all know in the military that are classified, right?
Yep.
So even though I had a security clearance, it says a need-to-know basis. So when I started approving what is called an Air Force Form 3952, the approval of hazardous materials, and I started seeing barium, aluminum oxide, and strontium come on the base from a contractor whose name was not listed, which was not normal, I started to realize that those crazy tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists might not be so crazy. So in 2008, amongst myself, I lived about less than a mile behind the flight line at Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma, in Oklahoma City. And due to my background as an industrial hygienist and an environmental specialist, I conducted soil grid sampling and grade sampling. Those of you who may not be too privy to chemistry, you know that there's natural elements occurring in Earth. Aluminum is one of them. However, barium, radioactive, and strontium are not. So I conducted those samples and saw limits in my community that would make your head spin. And I started to realize that those peers within my professional community that were trying to wake those of us in the military up were right. So right when I decided, I was on the fence, should I re-enlist? I was pregnant, just so you know, with my now 9-year-old daughter, Nuggie. You'll see her walking around. And I thought, wow, this is my livelihood. Do I question this? Or do I re-enlist and move forward? Amongst my ignorance, I moved forward, and I re-enlisted again. I raised my right hand to the Constitution, which I had not read all the way through. So after Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, I got transferred to 90 miles south of here, Warner Robins Air Force Base. Anyone know where that is?
Oh,
Yeah, it's like the big hub here in Georgia to fund the military. There's a lot of civilians that work there. It's 85% civilianized, 15% military. While I was at Warner Robins Air Force Base, let me remind you, I mentioned earlier that I got transferred from one base to another due to my professional background. Because I was such a stellar NCO in the Air Force, they transferred me from one depot maintenance base to the other one in the Air Force, Warner Robins. While at Warner Robins Air Force Base, I thought I was defending my country on a home front, making sure that all those people that went out there, front line, were safe and protected from carcinogens, radiation, inhalation, drinking water, noise, all of it. My job was to protect them so they could be all they can be. In 2009, late 2009, I stumbled upon something that changed my life. I ran across an operation at Warner Robins Air Force Base, which was exposing thousands of civilians to carcinogens. Those of you that are familiar with OSHA, in general industry and construction industry, for different constituents known as hazardous materials, OSHA sets levels for which certain employees can be exposed to. Well, what if I told you that these employees were exposed 100 times over that occupational exposure limit? That should probably scare you. That's an acute and an immediate hazard to carcinogens. People were getting sick. People were getting cancer. People had sores in their mouth from something called strontium chromate or chrome-6, a carcinogenic metal used in military operations. So after what I saw at Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma, and then what I saw at Warner Robins Air Force Base, Georgia, everything that I knew, everything that I thought I knew, this great nation, we are heroes. I had 4 stripes on my arm and 11 medals and ribbons on my chest. I thought I was protecting my homeland. When I brought to my commander to his attention that there were people exposed to these hazardous pollutants and people were getting sick, I'll give you the synopsis of the story. I took these air samples, I took the swipe samples. These people were actually dumb and ignorant enough to threaten me in writing. My threat was, mind you, I had a perfect history. Not one article of paperwork, not one Article 15, not one negative aspect on my record. I was the poster child for what an Air Force NCO should be. I was told that if I told the employees, which is required by law, that they were exposed to these materials, that my commander had the authority to lock me up in a mental institution for up to 120 days without being questioned. At the time, my daughter was 5 years old. I was told, who will take care of your daughter, because I was divorced. I was threatened to be locked up in a mental ward for trying to do my job. I was threatened to have my one child who I love with all my life taken away from me because I tried to do the one thing I was trained to do, protect the workforce. So folks, let me tell you, 2001 is when I entered the military. 4 stripes on my arm, 11 medals and awards on my chest. But it only took one day to change my life. And that day was October 27, 2010, when I left the United States Air Force at almost 10 years, halfway to retirement. I would have been scot-free. I left as a whistleblower of the United States Air Force. And I'd ask you that are veterans, or any of you that are civilian, what do you do in your careers? Do you work in the medical profession? Do you work in an airport? Where do you work? And what do you see? Because I guarantee you, if you step back and you connect those dots, you will see things that never made sense to you before. So as I fight the hatred and the disinformation trolls and those who try to ruin my reputation, for every negative thing I find about myself on the internet, excuse my French, but it pisses me off. And you know what? It makes me pull out some more documents that I took before I left the United States Air Force. And I save them, and I publish them, and I send them to my family members throughout the country. And I have friends tell me, be careful. You know what I tell them? Be careful what? I was in the United States military. They have my social security number and my address and my cell phone number. They can find me. So what I want to leave with you here today is to tell you, if you know someone who's in the military now, or you know a veteran, engage them. It's your due diligence. Whether you or not you agree with, quote, conspiracy websites like Infowars.com or Prison Planet, or whether you believe in geoengineering or chemtrails, please believe me because I saw it firsthand, okay? This is not what I want to be known for. It's a huge target on my back. I ask you to ask those veterans in your family or those friends and ask them to rise up, as Robbie Wells says. Do your part. Defend your nation. Join Oath Keepers. Get in touch with all the alternative media outlets. Support the acts and musicians. You guys, it all matters. I have people tell me, why do you do what you do? There's nothing we can do about it. I know the TSA is unconstitutional, but what can we do about it? Well, let me tell you, I've done things about it, okay? I've shot documentaries. I've done TV shows. I have things in the works I can't even mention so that they don't get edited before they air. You can do something about it. So just remember these numbers. 2001, I thought I was doing good. 4 stripes on my arm, 11 medals on my chest. One day to change my life. What day will be yours? Because trust me, it will come. It will directly affect you, and you will remember this. So please, rise up, do your due diligence, do your own investigations, and support your military by educating them. Thank you.
Hey everyone, it's Kristen. I just wanted to give you a quick look at some information for those of you who support me and get in your little debates about how I'm being accused of being a hired speaker to just make this up. So here's my old training record, just part of it. Kristen Meghan Edwards, sorry, it's a little blurry, I'm doing this on my cell, E5 Staff Sergeant. This is a training record, as you can see, hopefully. Under the area of hazardous materials and hazardous communication, 4.5.6.1, evaluate Air Force Form 3952s, which meant to research and interpret the MSDSs and tie them to tasks. You can see there's my initials, I was signed. This is a pretty thick document. Those of you in my career field still know what it is. But as you can see, my career field was real. Like I said, I work closely with OSHA, was detailed out to OSHA. I also did work for the VA. You can see I had my recent DOT training while working at the VA and decon training at the VA. Also have OSHA training, and I pulled out one of my medals to show you that Staff Sergeant Kristen Edwards did work at Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma, right-hand corner there, all right? So basically, those of you who think I'm just a hired speaker, I normally don't feel compelled to have to back myself up because this is what I do for a living. But as many of you start to support me, I just want to say I appreciate it, and this will help your argument. Thanks.